Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joe Dickerson. I'm CEO of Financial Forensic Services in Denver, Colorado. We are a forensic research firm that specializes in locating hidden and diverted assets around the country, or around the world now, to satisfy judgments. Found out several years ago when I was doing some consulting work for FDIC after the demise of the oil and gas industries. They took over a lot of failed banks that had a lot of judgments on the books, and during that time I learned that 80% of the civil judgments in the United States are never collected. So we just kind of turned that into a practice, and it's grown from local to state to national to international now. We have a lot of fun. Don't have to go to work anymore. I just go in and enjoy the challenges that we find. I apologize up front for the small screen. If we'd had the one downstairs, you probably could have seen the material. And they told us we could not have handout material because they were going to give you everything online after the conference. So bear with us the best you can on that, and we'll go ahead and get started here. Before we get into the main presentation, I wanted to give you some information that we use in our research department all the time. This is a service that if you have subpoenaed checks or if you've got checks from your clients, you can go in and ping that account and find out whether or not it's still an active account. You can't get balances, you can't get account numbers or anything like that from it, but you can determine whether or not it's still an active account. So you put in the payee, the routing number, and the bank account number, and it will tell you if the account is still in good standing or not. If you don't have the routing number, then you need to put in the name of the bank and the account number, and it will give you the routing number. And then in this case, we knew that this bank was in California, so we said all Bank of America accounts in California, and that's where we narrowed this down to getting the routing number. And then with the routing number and the account number, we were able to determine out of the 12 checks that we had in this stack that one of them was still drawn on an active account. We have found that the best way for us to work is do some preliminary upfront to find out if there is a high probability that the judgment debtor has assets, and if so, then we try to document those through public record. And we have found that these are the four main places, certainly in the United States, that assets are parked to try to get them outside of the reach of the judgment creditor in corporations, limited partnerships, limited liability companies, and trust. I will particularly speak just for a moment about the trust. I read a report last week from an attorney in Florida, in Arizona, and he was explaining to his client in a rather lengthy report that although they had located these two parcels of real estate that the judgment debtor had control over, that he had titled them in the name of a revocable trust. Therefore, the bank that had a lien on them was not going to be able to foreclose on it, nor would the judgment creditor be able to, because they were in a trust. And he said in his report that it was a revocable trust. Our experience is that revocable trusts have no asset protection. It's an alter ego of the settlor, and usually the settlor and the trustee are the same party, so there are no asset protection functions associated therewith. Contrary to that, on the irrevocable trust, generally carry 100% asset protection, and it's very difficult to get to the assets in the irrevocable trust. Generally speaking, the only way we've been able to reach those is to attack the conveyance of the asset into the trust as a fraudulent conveyance. If we can prove fraudulent conveyance, then you can unwind the transaction and get to those assets. Very seldom do we have a situation where we can actually reach the irrevocable trust, and we'll go through the elements of the fraudulent conveyances here in just a few moments. But these are the four places that we find most